There we go. I think we're just
Awesome.
about ready.
I think we're ready. So, Marcus, again, thanks so much for joining me. And hey, everybody online. I saw you in the chats earlier, and I'm going to join you. We're having a very special episode today. A couple things. First, we were having some weird weather stuff, and now it's decided to be gorgeous, which makes me laugh because, of course, it's also excruciatingly hot out here. So things could change in an instant. I'll show you kind of the, so we've got gorgeous sunset happening, but then we've got this intense cloud of doom thing going on. So we'll see what's what. So today what we'll do is we're gonna do the garden walk like normal, and then what we're gonna do is we're gonna jump into story time. I've got a really special story that I wanna share with everybody. If you know my story, a lot of you do. My background actually was, as a crisis counselor, but also as someone that was a living caregiver for my grandparents right up until end of life. And it's taken me a few years to be able to share this story because I was really deep in grief, and I'm actually really stoked to share it with you. And Marcus, again, thanks so much for joining me and holding space and facilitating this. This is a big step for me, so thank you.
Super happy to be here, Selena.
So I just wanted to check in with everybody, and if you've had an interesting week, I'd love for you to share one thing that has been a gift to you. And if you're joining us live, just share it in the comments. I will be joining you from my living room after the garden walk, and I'd love to respond. But yeah, let's get started with the walk. Now, I think it's an interesting time of year because, as a lot of you know who are avid gardeners, this is the time where you finally get to see the fruits of your labor. For those of you who have put in so much time and energy and effort in planting seeds and waiting for them to grow and nourishing them and nurturing them, this is that time where you finally get to see the fruit and enjoy it. And my garden is literally no exception. So these plants are now taller than me, just to put that into context. They're definitely reaching out, and finally their little hairs are starting to come in. So that's an exciting thing. Now I'm curious. Oh, I can't hear you, Marcus.
It just came in so clear. Like when you zoomed in on the plant, it suddenly was so clear. And that's what I said.
Excellent. One of the things that I've been battling in my garden this whole summer is the ants. So yeah, there's like an ant war going on in my garden right now. So if you guys have any tips on how to handle ants, but organically, that would be amazing. Got a little ladybug hanging out. Oh, and I hear Kitty Waffles. Hey, baby girl. Oh, she's running away. She wants you to open the door. Not yet. So for those of you who follow astrological gardening, we're in the new moon time, which is really exciting. So if you're wanting to do harvesting, obviously that's a great time to do it. We're just getting past the time when planting seeds is not encouraged. So get back to planting if you're going to start your fall garden. These are some of the tomatoes that are finally coming through in our garden, turning from these gorgeous greens to these reds. I'm so excited. We've been eating like kings and queens here. And I actually wanted to show you this. Our tobacco is finally popping through. So these tobacco seeds aren't going to make it through the fall winter. So I'm going to bring them into my indoor garden, and we'll do some more there, grow them out and see what's what. So next season, if you guys want some tobacco seeds, by all means, please let me know. I got those seeds at Summerhill Pyramid Winery a few years ago, and you can use them for ceremonial tobacco use, which I would highly recommend. They also grow really great with the cannabis plants. They're like friends, so consider that as well. Just want to show you these yum, juicy tomatoes. We're going to be making some sauces this week. Very exciting. And my very favorite aromas, they're finally coming in. So we will be eating a lot of tomatoes this fall. My other Roma bush, she's having a good time growing here. And I just wanted to share with everybody, you know, the significance of this episode specifically is I really do want to have a real chat about death and how beautiful it actually can be when you're fully present throughout the process. You know, I know in our society, especially North America, it's something that's quite taboo. We're very used to shipping off our dying or the people that are, you know, nearing end of life into facilities, which I think for some families is a great option. But for our family, we decided to go a different way. And what I can honestly say is I know that this story is going to pull at some heartstrings, but I also know that it's going to be inspiring for all of you to really live your life to the fullest. And I'm excited to share with you how cannabis really changed the trajectory of my grandparents' failing health in a way that really gave them quality of life, I should say, at the very end. So I'm excited to share that with you as well. I'm just curious if there's anybody that's watching live right now. Do you guys have aging parents that are maybe starting to show early memory loss or declining health, and maybe you're wondering how you can support them better? If that's yes, please let me know, because in the fall, I am planning on doing a special episode of a death cafe. So we will have a death doula coming on, talking about death, and really helping us understand what a normal process it can be. Even if somebody is afflicted with cancer, how we can really help facilitate a better way of dying with dignity, and also how to live our life to the fullest while we're still here. I know the last episode I shared, you know, I really don't think that people are like half alive or on their way out. It's like you're either alive or you're dead. And today I'm going to be sharing a little bit more stories around that. So hope you're enjoying my tomatoes. We've got pumpkins happening, lots of good stuff. I'm going to go back to the cannabis because they're just doing so well. And I'm excited. I've got a few girls that I'm going to be harvesting pretty quick here. Actually tonight, we've got some that are prepped inside. So I'm just going to walk you really quick through my process with the ceremony. What I do is I actually hold their little leaves like hands, and I let them know tonight is the night. And I usually like to wait until it's quite dark, and sometimes even I'll wait till just before dusk. Oh, and there's Waffles. Waffles is my little temple kitty. She's chatting and she's asking me to let her in. So Alva, if you're watching, if you want to open the back door, that'd be great. But what I do with the girls before I harvest is I let them know tonight's the night. Now is the time. And I would really love to thank you for your medicine. I like to tune in to the plants, and I like to ask them how they would like to be harvested. And that might seem kind of weird, but I know for me, once I've made that connection, they let me know, you know, like the ones for this evening, they've asked that we actually don't cut. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be ripping them out by the root. I'm going to be washing the root, and then I'm going to be hanging the plant to dry. Of course, removing the fan leaves first and making sure that that root is dry, but that's how these ones have told me that they'd like to be harvested. And if I'm going a little too fast, let me know. But what I do is I sing them their song, I thank them for the medicine. And I thank them for the healing. And then once they've been hung dry and they're ready for their next process, what I really enjoy doing is just gently removing those buds, trimming them slightly, and then prepping them to cure. And for those of you who watched the first episode and we did the tour of the garden, I just want to bring your attention back to this apple tree because it has a lot of this apple tree we planted in memory of my grandfather, so Opa, Bernie, and we planted these apples as apples of wisdom. So we did scatter his ashes right here. And when Oma passed, I took a little lock of her hair and I also buried it here. And she passed 2 years ago, but a few years after Opa passed, we started getting these apples, which is really exciting. And this is actually going to be the first year where we'll be able to harvest the fruit and enjoy this tree of knowledge. So for us, I imagine that his life and his legacy lives on through the fruit that we eat and the connection that we make, where this fruit will then nourish my life and continue to provide support and health for me to continue to live my life to the fullest. I really want to share that, when we tune into our ancestors, it really is a never-ending cycle. I love the idea, and it's true, that, for example, a woman, she will carry all of the eggs that she'll ever have in her lifetime as she's forming in the womb. And if you can imagine that as those eggs are developing in her mother's womb, that grandchild is actually existing in the grandmother. So we really are connected. So if you can imagine that you, as a cell in your mother's developing body, was also present inside your grandmother. And the cycle never ends. And today we're going to play around with this idea of ancestry and connecting with our lineage, and not only healing a lot of the traumas of the past, and being able to dissolve those timelines with our presence now, but also choosing from this point forward how we can heal those lineages to come. In my opinion, this is part of the real work. And in the last episode, we talked about the shadow, those unconscious parts of ourselves, and how we can begin to heal them through our presence and our awareness and the choices that we make here and now. What cannabis is going to bring us is a whole new perspective on how we can make that connection on a cellular level, bringing forward the wisdom of our ancestors so we can really heal future generations to come and improve the current state of humanity and the world. There's a really juicy sunflower that's calling to us over here. So let's go check her out. As you can see, our purple pole beans have done very well. And we had a surprise bean. These are actually purple snow peas, and they are freaking delicious. So as you can see, I've left some to seed. So if you guys want any seeds, let me know. This is that sunflower that was calling. And if you can see, it's nourishing the bees, which nourish life for all of us. So I highly encourage you, even if you plant one thing next year, make it a sunflower. It feeds so many life systems. The bees, like I said, I've got some ant issues, so maybe not on this one, but the ants are beginning to farm aphids on these. Super fun. So at some point I will be removing them, but for now we'll just continue to sustain life. I don't use any chemicals, so if you guys have some really clever ways of handling that, I would be very open. And again, if you guys want some seeds, even for sunflowers, just hit me up. I'd love to share. Now, as you can imagine, a lot of the flowers have moved into blooms, but we do have some new blackberry flowers that have decided to grace our presence as our bush is fully blooming with fruit. And I just wanted to show you these pretty little flowers. Nature always provides. And I wanted to remind you that this really is the season to start making your medicines for the fall. So if you feel called to begin harvesting, please do your research first on how to properly harvest, and then begin making some medicine. I'm going to show you some nasturtiums here. I love nasturtiums. Let's go up to this one right here. These are really great for pest control in regards to spider mites. And one of the things that I've been learning about personally is that spider mites love hot, dry environments. So for me in the Okanagan Valley, that's what's going on right now. So I've got my soap spray ready. So again, you guys, this is a new moon time. So I invite you to set new intentions for this next month's cycle. So consider for yourself that this is, probably the last hot new moon of the season. And I'd love for you to take some time, maybe tonight or tomorrow, to really get clear about the energy and the intentions that you're bringing into this new cycle. And then also what you're wanting to release. I know that we had a chat about how at the full moon, we're at this pinnacle of illumination, and I'm sure a lot of you had some illuminating insights, especially in regards to the shadow. So if you have some aspects that you're ready to let go of, I absolutely invite you to do so, and to also replace that energy with new things that you're calling in. I wanted to show you this gorgeous sunset before it's too late. And this mountain that's right there, this is actually the mountain that my Oma used to always talk about going over when she died. And this was the last mountain that she saw before she took her last breath. It's very significant to me. And I feel really lucky that I get to share it with you guys right now. All right. Whoop. I didn't fall, so we're good. So what we're going to do is we're going to head inside. I've got a little spot set up for story time, and I'm really excited to share the story of my Oma and Opa, Melita and Bernie, and their end-of-life journey. Oh, last but not least, if you guys want some sage, some garden sage, please let me know. I've got tons of seeds. So I'm just gonna flip the camera and welcome to my home. I'm excited to share with you guys. Oh, and I got my garlic braids. It is that time of year. And Apollo never disappoints. Oh, and I got my garlic braids. Oh, it's that time of year. Thanks, Alva. I'm getting feedback on my computadora, but that's okay. Apollo is joining us from the window. Hey, baby boy. Yeah. He says hello. This plant here is a really cool one called a Ming. And usually she's really finicky, but we put her in this hot window and she seems to just love it. So welcome. This is our living room. And I can honestly say that Oma literally died in this room. So it's a very special place. And we've got another guest here, little Artemis. Hey, Artie. Looks like she's been having a good nap. So if you guys will bear with me here, I'm gonna figure out how to put this camera up. Alva, may I? You guys just let me know if I flip it this way, if it goes weird. Oh, no, I think we're good. Sweet. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Actually, before we do that, I'm gonna show you guys this gorgeous sunset. Very near and dear to my heart. So again, this is the last view Oma had when she took her last breath. And I think for a 93-year-old woman who really lived a full life, this is a pretty spectacular thing to see. So again, welcome to my garden. I hope you guys are enjoying this as much as I'm enjoying sharing. Okay. So bear with me. This is the tech part that's hilarious. So just make it comfy. Awesome. Okay. Can everybody see and hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay. All right. Okay. Welcome, you guys. So I'm just wanting to say hey to a few people here, just because it's been a couple weeks. So JC, I want to say hey. And yes, ladybugs. I actually caught some ladybugs making love in the garden a few days ago. And that was pretty special. I gotta say, with the ants that are farming the aphids and seeing the ladybugs there munching on them, that was pretty rad. Alva saw one of the ladybugs eating the aphids and he said that they eat them like corn. Nature is savage, just like Marcus said in the last episode. It's a little intense. I also want to say hey to John. Welcome. LT Gold 007. I love it. Welcome, welcome. Gary Herman Hobbs, hey. And Matthew Fernandez, thanks so much for joining us again. It's great to have you here. Much love and blessings to you too. Oh, and Raymond Cowell, thanks for saying my little Apollo's like a little mini lion. We like to call him like our little, he's like our miniature mountain lion. We're so lucky to have him. Hey, Donnie. good to see you. Pika Delphine, nice to see you too. Thank you so much for joining us. James Banks, welcome, welcome. I just want to say thank you guys for joining me. I know for me, this is really enriching for my soul to share, and it means so much to me that you've decided to show up and spend Sunday with me, so thank you. And for those of you that are watching later, thanks so much for joining. We're gonna get into a really juicy story, and I'm just gonna invite you guys, if you're wanting to have a toke, please by all means do that. I left my joint somewhere else, so I did take some CBD earlier, so I'm just gonna be good on CBD for now. If Alva hears this and he decides to bring me a joint, that'd be great. And if not, please send me some cannabis vibes and love. So I think, Marcus, this is when you're like, bong rip. So if you guys have your bongs, great. What do you got there?
A little strawberry banana.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness.
Quite lovely.
So lovely.
Story time, and I just want to say that your house is beautiful. It was so awesome. You walked up in the stairs, and then it got all dark, and your face kind of disappeared. And then you like opened up, and the hardwood floors, and the garlic, and the cat, and the big plant on the. It was just good. Trust me, it was very good.
Oh, thank you. So for those of you who don't know, this was Oma and Opa's house. So after they passed, I know that it was really important to them that the house stays in the family, and we're in the process of buying it off them, which is really exciting for us. And I think for them too, like I imagine in spirit, they're really happy to see us, you know, starting our lives together here in this home. So thanks. And all these plants that you can see here, like this monstera, I'll just flip the camera really quick so you can see this other one. We've got this amazing peace lily going on right here. She blooms a lot, constantly blooming. So yeah, it's definitely a sanctuary, and I love it here. And once COVID opens up, hopefully we'll be able to have friends over again, which will be great. Yeah. So curious, what is everybody toking right now? I'm curious. Shanzo has strawberry banana as well, very terpy, awesome. Nice. Cool, you guys. My CBD jam is gonna be harvested tonight, so I'm really excited to make some more. I love making tincture, it's one of my favorite things. So having some more of that, I think it'll be delicious. Ooh, black cherry punch from LPD 710, nice. Angela Moon's 42 ice cream cake, please enjoy some of that for me. Nice, oh, wonderful, you guys. Well, please enjoy. And my invitation is, as you're enjoying it, to really close your eyes and just feel into your body and notice how you feel as the cannabis just gets saturated into all of your cells and gets received at that level. Cool. So like I said, tonight's story is a big one. And I was chatting with my friend earlier about where to start with this story. And I've just decided I'm just going to share from the heart, because that's how I do things. So for those of you who don't know, I did take care of my grandparents for 10 years in this house, along with my partner and a really great small core unit of care support that we were able to afford through a program called Cecil. It's a program in British Columbia anyways, that helps people that are either paraplegic or quadriplegic to direct their own care. And because a lot of their needs were similar to my grandparents, we were able to qualify and get some government funding to be able to keep them at home. Now, I know that this isn't an option for everybody, but it was something that was really important to my grandfather. So my Opa Bernie, He, at one point, when I came to visit him one summer, we were sitting at our kitchen table like we always do and having some really serious chats. And he shared with me that his dying wish was to die in his house. And now I was like 22 years old and very naive and quite ambitious, still am. And I told him that I promised I would do everything I could to keep him at home. And we did. My grandmother, Oma Melita, she, oh my goodness, we used to call her Mischievous Melita. So if you saw the picture for this episode, you'll know that she is enjoying this delicious popsicle and she's got this like awesome smile on her face and just having so much fun. And I really love that picture because I feel like it really captures her in her full essence, you know, just like she was just joy from the inside out. And she always was having a good laugh, truly. So just always looking on the bright side of life. Now, Oma and Opa, they came from Germany and Poland. So my grandfather was German, my Oma was Polish, and they both did survive the Holocaust. And I know that for both of them, it was a very dark time in their life. For my Oma, she was around 14 years old when the war started. And her memories were a lot of the times being locked in basements when soldiers would come through the farm to keep her and her sisters safe. And their family was not short of tragedy. At one point in the war, they ended up losing their home. The Germans came in and they told them that they were to be evicted. So she told me that at this point, I mean, one of her sisters had passed away, her father had been murdered, and it was her and her mom, my grandmother Teresa. And what they had done is they had released the dogs just out on the farm, and they literally fled by foot. They went to West Germany by foot, and because my grandmother, Oma Melita, let's just call her Melita just to make it easier. So Melita, she had actually learned German when she was in Lutheran church and also taking German school. So she was able to pass as a German, and she did that in order to survive. My Opa, he was a young man, and he was enlisted in the German army, so he was a Nazi soldier. And he was also a very kind-hearted man. So I do want to precurse that, where sometimes people are enlisted to do awful things in order to survive. And the way that him and my Oma Melita would share is that, you know, stupid Hitler, he ruined everything. My Opa, he was captured really early in the war, and he was actually a prisoner of war in Serbia for 4 years. I did some research when I was in high school, and I learned that, you know, around 600,000 soldiers went into this camp, and 6,000 or less came out. Opa would talk about how it was so cold and they were only given a blanket between 6 or 8, sometimes 10 men, and guaranteed by the morning, the ones on the outside were dead. So he had a really traumatic time during the war, just like many other people all over the world. But he survived. The things that he survived on were cabbage water soup. And he would talk about how if you got a piece of cabbage, you were lucky. And instead of, you know, they would always have rations. You always had a choice between 1 cigarette a day or a package of sugar. And Opa decided to have the sugar, even though the other soldiers were saying that the cigarette could suppress your hunger. He was always thinking about the long game. You know, how would this starvation affect him and his life and his health? So he chose the sugar, and he survived, luckily. The reason I'm sharing this is because I want you guys to know that, you know, sometimes in the darkest times, we can still overcome. We can still live a good life. So after Opa was released from this camp, he actually went back to Germany to find out that his family had all perished except for his brother and his mother, and that he couldn't find them. All the buildings had been bombed out. He couldn't get food because he didn't have an address for food stamps. And he was forced to go and work on a farm in France for another 3 years in order to make enough money to buy new clothes because he was still in his soldier uniform.
and to start a new life. And when he came to North America, he decided to go to Canada instead of the United States because he never wanted for his son to be forced into a war. So that's why he came to Canada. Now, around the same time, my Oma was given an opportunity to move to Canada and to become a nanny for a Jewish family. She was sponsored by her cousin. So when my Oma landed, she ended up working in Edmonton as a caregiver to 2 young Jewish children. The youngest, a little girl, ended up teaching her how to speak English. And that's where she really began the next chapter of her life. But I want to start here because it's important, especially when we get to the death part of their story. Now, both of them had really worked hard in order to be able to make a living. And my grandmother, when she was 33 years old, she still hadn't wed. And her mother told her that she was a spinster and that she better get on it. So she had a friend in the community, Alma, who actually was trying to set her up with her brother, and invited Lolita over for dinner. And Opa was a bricklayer, and he ended up being friends with Alma's husband, and he was there. And before the dinner was served, he was getting ready to leave, but there was a spark between them, which was kind of interesting. So very quickly, Lolita decided she wasn't going to marry Alma's brother, and instead she decided to marry my Opa within 2 months of meeting him. And very quickly after, they gave birth to my mother, 9-10 months later. So very quickly they started a family. Now, like I said, they worked really hard for the things that they had. My grandmother, she worked at the Royal Alec Hospital. She started in the kitchen, and she ended up in the burn unit in the 60s and early 70s. And if we can think back to medicine at that time, crazy different than today. And the methodology was a lot different for helping healing burn victims, but that's what she loved to do, and that was her passion, and that's where she put her focus and attention, was being a mother and also helping these people. Now fast forward to their retirement, when they decided to come through the Okanagan Valley after Expo 86, and they fell in love with the land, and it reminded them of the old country, but in a good way, and for them, it was an opportunity to start fresh again and to really lay foundations for the rest of their lives. So they bought a lot here, and they built their house. Again, Opa was a bricklayer, so there's brick on the house. And they really lived out a good, extra 10, 15 years of glorious days where they were tending their garden and going to the dances in the community and really enjoying life. And where my story comes into this is, as a young child, I would come and visit them every summer. They moved here when I was 4, so seeing them was difficult, but it was something that I always looked forward to every year. And we developed a really deep relationship. And one of the things that I love about them is, considering all of their dark history and the atrocities that they've lived through and survived, their mindset was always about looking on the bright side of life and seeing the sweetness in life. And not dwelling on the bad things, but looking to the good, which, as a kid, especially in my angsty teens, I thought was total bullshit. But as I continued to develop and grow, I realized that this was a way to cultivate joy in the now moment, which was really important, especially to them. Now, I remember sitting at that kitchen table when Opa asked me to help him die in this house. He wanted to die at home. He didn't want to go into a facility. My grandmother, she had begun developing Alzheimer's, and you could notice from her moods that she would get agitated easily. She would get really frustrated with herself and really mad. And I remember this one time looking out at the sunset and seeing her cry in the kitchen and just standing with her because she was so frustrated. She couldn't remember what she was doing. Opa was a very demanding man. He had a lot of, he was very German, and if you guys know German people, there's not a lot of joy there a lot of the times. The humor is quite dry and it's very black and white. Like, I need this now. And it wasn't in a way to be rude, but it was just the culture at the time. Now, Thank you guys so much for being supportive. As I'm telling this, I'm like, oh man, I'm kind of freaked out that I'm sharing all this, but it's important. So I remember standing at the kitchen sink with my grandmother while she was crying and realizing that they needed more help. And at that time, you know, I was a young adult and I had been coming to visit them not only every summer, but every winter for Christmas, and then every other month to check in, and then every month, and then every 2 weeks, and then every freaking weekend. I was literally going back and forth from Alberta to BC to come and visit my grandparents to check in and make sure that they were okay. Now, Opa, being the stubborn guy that he was, he didn't want to accept help. He didn't want to be a burden, and he could handle it all on his own. But what he didn't realize is that he was putting a lot of that burden on my grandmother to do the things that he was starting to not so much be able to do anymore. So he's always been a very able-bodied man, always working with his hands. And then at a certain point, his physical health began to deteriorate around the same time that my grandmother's mental health started to deteriorate. And together they were kind of like this semi-functioning unit of a person. But things were beginning to fall apart and they definitely needed more help. So around the time that I was dating my husband now and still taking care of them, you know, I'd made the choice that I really needed to come and take care of them, and I really needed to be in the Okanagan to be there for them. So I told Alva, I was like, so I need to move to Kelowna. Now I'm in Vernon, but I need to move to the Okanagan and I need to take care of my grandparents. So if that's too much for you, I understand. He's wonderful, and he said that he would move with me. Lucky him, he's from Prince George, and all his friends relocated to Kelowna, so it wasn't much of a stretch for him, but definitely made me uproot my life. At that time, I was 22, 23 years old, so very young, and I remember the fitness center that I was working at in Edmonton. We had a lot of seniors that were going there, and they knew that this was something that I was contemplating, and they said, don't do it. This is going to be the hardest thing. You don't know what you're getting yourself into. And they were all warning me against it. And being a stubborn-headed me, I decided to do it anyways. And what I can honestly say is I don't regret the choice, but it also, up until this point, has been the most challenging thing I've ever done. So I'm going to just pause there for a second because I have the coolest sunset happening behind me right now that I want to share with you guys just for a second. If you guys want to take another toke while you look at the sunset, please do.
Don't mind if I do.
Nature provides just so much beauty, just so much love for us. If only we knew how to slow down and take it all in. So while you guys look at the sunset, I'm going to continue this story because it really does transition into their sunset years. Sunset years is another term for end of life, or at least those last years before you transition out. So I did the big crazy and I moved myself another province to take care of my grandparents. And to be honest, I really didn't know what I was getting myself into, but my guiding light was I knew this was the right thing to do for my family. And again, I know that not everybody is able to do it, but what I can say is if you feel inspired to do it, you will not regret it. And that's one of the best gifts that I've got from this whole experience is I really love living life with no regrets. And sometimes the hardest choices we make are the best ones. And I know for sure taking care of Oma and Opa 110% has primed me for the rest of my life. Now, if you can imagine with Oma's Alzheimer's and dementia getting worse, being asked the same question multiple times in 5 minutes, and knowing that there's nothing you can do but just be present with the moment and share the answer again and again and again, and maybe get creative with the answer and make it a little fun. That was my approach to this whole thing. And I think that's actually what made me sane throughout the entire process was humor. Oh my God, the darkest of humor will get you through holy shit. And the things that you see, I can honestly say dementia is a hell of a drug. And for any of you who have aging parents or grandparents or family members or people that you love in the community that are afflicted, you know that at any given moment you are dealing with multiple versions of a person. And that's okay. It really keeps you on your toes, and it really keeps you present with what's going on. So I'm gonna flip this camera. Actually, this sunset is so gorgeous. I'll just keep chatting until it's over. But what I can say is, you know, humor and unconditional love is what gets you through. And you do see some pretty crazy things, and you do go through some pretty crazy things. But if you can laugh, because there's nothing else to do, I mean, you can cry, but sometimes all you gotta do is laugh. Now, I will tell you, when you start to take care of somebody that you're close with, like a family member, especially when you're living in their house, you really get to know a person. Like, you really, really get to know a person. And when I'm talking about the ancestral healing, you begin to notice these patterns and quirks and these things that you have in yourself that not only does your mother or father have, or your sister or brother, but also your grandparents. And you also begin to wonder, like, where did they learn those things from? So I know for me, it was really interesting to watch my Oma get really worked up and have anxiety and see her getting so frustrated, and then watching my mom do the same thing and watching my sister do the same thing and literally witnessing myself do the same thing and being like, oh my God, this shit does not belong to me. This is learned behavior. This is in my cells. This is programmed into me somehow, and I really want to transcend. And especially when you're watching these patterns unfold in front of you, it gives you that pause of like, where did this come from? Like, is this really mine? And do I really need to continue to behave in this way, or is there a way that I can move beyond it? And I think one of the biggest ways that you can is by being aware first, noticing the patterns that lead to it, and then slowly, through awareness, through messing up, and through kind of getting back on the horse, you learn again, and you're able to reprogram that. So that was one of the things that I began with my ancestral healing, was instead of getting frustrated with what was going on, I really just learned how to breathe and get through it. And I can honestly tell you that cannabis was my saving grace. I would go on my little sanity drives where I would go and have a quick teeny toke for 20 minutes, go and look at something beautiful in nature, come back in, ready to go. And I'm going to give you guys a few funny stories just to kind of lighten it up and share with you how, like, even in the craziest times, if you can learn to laugh, that's the medicine. So one of the fun things I learned about my Oma was that she had undiagnosed IBS. So for years, she had been hiding it. Nobody knew. Again, it was undiagnosed. And I remember my mom, she had gone back to Edmonton to go and visit my sister. My sister, bless her heart, she was diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma at 24 years old. So she was undergoing a chemotherapy treatment then. And I was in between houses, my mom's house with their dogs, Oma and Opa, and then also my own home, trying to make it all work, which was pretty crazy. But I remember my mom had left. I had just gotten back from driving her to the airport, and I come into the house and I'm like, what is that smell? And I ended up going into their ensuite bathroom, and it was like literally shit had hit the fan. It was like everywhere. It was like out of that scene in Dumb and Dumber. I shit you not. And it was one of those things where I was like, oh my God. And I paused and I'm looking and I'm like, what the fuck am I gonna do? So I took a step back from the bathroom. I closed the door. I went outside. I smoked a joint and I was like, what am I gonna do? I had a quick cry, but then that turned into laughter because I was like, well, what the fuck? It's up to me. So I ended up making this like garbage bag suit and then like going into the bathroom and like handling business, because that's what you do in those types of situations. Now, when I say that cannabis helped me see the brighter side of life, it also helped Oma and Opa. And what I'll tell you is that honestly, like life throws you curveballs and it really comes down to how you handle it. I'm glad you guys are enjoying the sunset. It's so beautiful. But it really is how you handle it. And what I can honestly say is without cannabis, I think I would have handled things very differently. But with cannabis, I was able to at least have a good laugh along the way. Now, with Oma, with her dementia, it got to a point where she was doing what's called sundowning. And sundowning is when, at this time, when it's a beautiful sunset, that energy ramps up as if you're waking up to start the day. And when it's time to get up in the morning, you're exhausted and you want to go to sleep. So it's like their internal rhythm flips. And for somebody that's trying to maintain a house and keep things kind of regular for everybody else, like my Opa, that became really disruptive really fast. So lucky me, learning how to use cannabis was wonderful. At the time I was working in a dispensary and there was a wise woman there who was making infused jams and with THC. And it was really cool because she invited me to give Oma a little bit of THC jam, you know, about dinner time. So she would begin to feel relaxed and calm and sleepy when she needed to, which was great. And for those of you that know anything about Alzheimer's, what's happening is that the amyloid plaque in your brain, so you have these synaptic clefts, what happens is this plaque begins to develop between the synapses and it blocks the communication from happening. So the cool thing about THC, especially with early onset Alzheimer's, is it can begin to clear that plaque out and it can begin to help the communication happen again between those synapses, which is really cool. So what we found with Oma is we would give her the jam at night and she would wake up in the morning relaxed, refreshed, more calm, and she would have a clarity about her that I think for her was like a relief because she wasn't waking up confused and frazzled anymore, just absolutely exhausted. If any of you that are watching have ever had, you know, several sleepless nights, I know for me, I just feel like jagged. So that was the same for her, and THC really helped to curb that. But for the day, we were noticing that there were points where she would become agitated and sometimes even aggressive, which was really out of character for her. But, you know, when we look at behavior as being an indication of communication, what she was communicating with us was that she was uncomfortable with what was going on, that she was actually really afraid, that she knew she was losing control and there really wasn't much she could do about it. And that frustration was coming out, especially when she began to lose the ability to speak the words clearly that she wanted to and complete the sentences, or if she gets stuck on a word or she couldn't find the word, she'd get really frustrated. So we began giving her CBD in the daytime, which was really helpful for just soothing her, reducing the anxiety, helping her have more of a sunny disposition about things. And it also helped for her if we needed to give her a bigger dose of THC at night, help curb the grogginess that could potentially happen in the morning, which was really great for her. It did a lot of things too. You know, we were giving her the CBD originally as an oil drop, and we moved it into a honey. And what we found was the honey was also nutrition. So we were using local organic wildflower honey that was sourced at a local apiary. So really rich in nutrients for her. And she enjoyed having her teas in the daytime. So it was really nice to just kind of like slip that into her teas and she was good. So she'd have her little jam sandwiches in the evening and her tea in the daytime, which was great. Now, for her, as things continue to progress, and we're just going to focus on her for a moment, we also noticed that, I mean, there's a lot of phases of Alzheimer's, to the point where, you know, she got to a level where she wasn't really able to verbally communicate anymore. And we were really lucky. You know, we had incredible caregivers. One of them, her name is Anya. She is like an earth angel, like she really is. You know, she took the time to not only get to know Oma and Opa, she speaks German, which was really helpful, but she also used to be a kindergarten teacher. So she understood how to play with that mind and to make things exciting and to curb behaviors in a creative way. You know, like there was one day, it was one of her first shifts. Oma was in the neighbor's yard. She had snuck over there. So Anya was watching her. She snuck away from Anya, went to the neighbor's yard, and began ripping up our neighbor's prized flowers. And they're gorgeous flowers. And Anya's like trying to get her to stop. But as she's trying to get her to stop, Oma's getting more agitated, and she's getting confrontational, and she's getting frustrated and combative, which happens a lot when you're trying to curb behavior by being too direct. So what Anya did instead is she was like, come over here. I've got a secret for you. Come. And Willie just like looking around. And Anya was able to coax her back onto her property by play therapy, which was really creative and awesome. So what I can say is having the right support systems in place was also a blessing. It also gave me some respite, because after 8 years of taking care of them, I was freaking exhausted, you know, and it was really helpful. Now, we'll focus on Oma. She passed away just a little over 2 years ago. And what ended up happening for her in your end of life was really interesting. You know, she had lost her ability to speak. She could kind of what's called parrot, so she could kind of mimic what you were saying, but she couldn't get her words out. But she was absolutely still communicating through her behavior. At this point, she had already broken a hip, which caused, you know, even more frustration for her because she couldn't motor around the way that she wanted to. Gave us a bit of relief, to be honest, because we weren't trying to chase her down. But, you know, you could tell that things were starting to shift for her. And I went to the Spirit Plant Medicine Conference a few years ago, and I watched a video by Paul Stamets. And he was sharing how psilocybe cubensis, so psilocybin, can be very helpful for people with Alzheimer's. And just, again, you know, like clearing out those pathways and helping create clarity, but also calming the nervous system. And that was paired with lion's mane and niacin. Now, I will precurse this. I'm not a medical doctor. I was going on that recommendation of what's called the Paul Stamets stacking blend. And what we found for Oma was that combined with reishi mushrooms that she had already been taken, actually really helped her improve her quality of life quite a bit. For her, she had a rapid incline in her cognitive abilities, to the point where she knew something wasn't right, where she was able to communicate not only, you know, back to German, but she was able to speak Polish again, as well as English. And this was within about a month and a half time. So it was like nothing short of a miracle. And it was really cool because this was in her last few months of life. And I really do believe that what these mushrooms were also doing was help to prime her for death. You know, they were helping to remove some of the anxieties that were coming up. And she would have the yawns and she would have those little tears, but she seemed to be more at ease for a time until things got to be more lucid for her, where she was really realizing something wasn't right. And you could tell that it was quite disturbing for her, just seeing how eroded her health had become. Now, this is after the time that my Opa passed. I'm not really following the timeline correctly, but for her, it was a comfort because it was helping move a lot of those stuck emotions that I believe she hadn't dealt with in years. And one of the gifts and the curses of Alzheimer's is, yes, you kind of lose who you are in this moment, but what it's also doing is it's removing layers of false personality, and it begins to reveal the true person underneath. And what it ended up revealing for us was this really loving, kind, sweet, gentle woman who, you know, after years of hard conditioning of, you know, being the household creator and being the woman that had to hold it all together, that she could finally just relax and enjoy life. And what I can honestly say is those last few months of her life were awesome. That incline in her ability to speak only lasted a month or so. And in that time, she did have a really lucid moment that was really profound for me, because she looked at me and she said, and at the time I didn't really get it, but she said, when she goes, I'll go too. And I was like, okay, I don't quite get it, but okay. So fast forward to Oma having the stroke that began to really take her out. So she had had a series of severe strokes, and I had gotten a phone call from Anya to come to the house right away. So I came back home. I was just on my way home from work. And Oma, she was completely nonverbal. She couldn't move her face. You could tell she was quite terrified, because when you went to hold her hand, she was just gripping you hard. So we took her to the hospital, and we confirmed that yes, she definitely had a stroke, and that she may not survive what was going on. There was quite a significant amount of brain damage, and what the doctor had guessed was that she had been having small strokes for quite a long time, and that this was a big one. So we were preparing for my grandfather. I mean, he died at home, and I'll share that story in a moment. But for Oma, I was really being pushed to put her in hospice, which for somebody with advanced dementia can be very disorienting. And I knew in my heart that it wasn't the right thing to do. So we didn't. And I fought very hard for Melita. And the part that I haven't really shared is if I hadn't advocated so hard, Interior Health, BC Healthcare Services wanted to put her in a home for quite a long time, just because it was easier on the system. But for her and her quality of life, it wouldn't have been a good fit. And unfortunately for a lot of seniors, and we've seen this during COVID, those facilities can be absolutely brutal for somebody's quality of life. Oftentimes people are medicated, often to the point of being sedated, because it's easier for a caregiver to take care of that patient, especially if they're combative. Unfortunately, a lot of the people that are in those facilities, up to 70%, and that was a stat that was given to me by Dr. Natasha Riz, so Tash, up to 70% of them die due to urinary tract infections. And that's something that's very easily avoidable. That's just changing somebody's undergarment when they need it, not when it's time on the schedule for the caregiver. So for us, it was a non-negotiable piece. We wanted to keep her at home. And what I can say is that we had a lot of support from the community nurse. They came out, they were very supportive, and they gave us what I call the death kit, which is basically the kit to keep somebody comfortable before they pass. So you get, several doses of hydromorphone, and you also get anti-nausea medication that you can administer with IV. And they prep you for being able to administer those drugs. So it was a big learning curve, but we were ready. Now with Melita, we were actually able to keep her quite comfortable at home without those drugs until the very end, which was awesome. So we were using, for example, CBD in her mouth for superficial dehydration, as well as a way to help counteract some of the death anxiety that's very normal for people that are preparing to pass. Because she had already had a lot of exposure to psilocybin in small doses paired with lion's mane, we weren't giving her the niacin at a certain point. She had actually processed a lot of the anxiety before she passed, which was really great. So she was quite comfortable for the most part. Interesting things happen when people begin to die. One of the first things is the dehydration. So the superficial dehydration, we were able to keep that under bay with CBD. What also happens orally is what's called thrush, or like a yeast infection in the mouth. So we were able to use the CBD as an antibacterial, antifungal in that way. We were also using blueberry juice to help, because that also is helpful. Now she was at a point where she wasn't able to swallow anymore. So she was losing water weight every day, and she was also quite frail at this point. So, every day we're emptying her catheter bag and seeing less and less, water coming out. Skin becomes very crepey and eyes become very dry. So having, some eye drops on hand just to keep her eyes moist was really important. And then also having topicals, so creams and lotions available as the skin was becoming crepey, just to get rid of any discomfort that she might be feeling, especially with the dehydration. If you guys have ever been severely dehydrated, you know that your muscles get very sore. Bed sores are something that can happen. Usually they happen in people that aren't being turned often. So the idea is to actually move somebody every 4 hours into a new position so they're not compressing themselves on a certain point and creating a bed sore, which is essentially just, it's like a bruise under the skin that ends up eating through the skin. And once that begins to happen, it's very difficult to stop it. So with the cannabis topicals and with moving her every 4 hours, literally had a timer, we were able to make sure that didn't happen for her. Other interesting things that happen when people die, your feet are a really good indication. So normally when you're laying in bed, your feet are kind of up, but as you're beginning to go, the feet begin to droop. So that was a really interesting indication as well. And what ends up happening is, for some people, depending on how long it takes them to pass, but this is in seniors, people that are dying naturally, what ends up happening is the heart has a harder and harder time pumping blood to those extremities. So at a certain point, the body knows that it needs to self-preserve, so it stops pumping blood to those areas, which can be really alarming if you don't know what you're looking for. Again, we were really lucky. So we had awesome people supporting us, keeping her at home in the community. And they really walked us through like the hardest, most gruesome parts of what could potentially happen, and then walked us back to the mildest things, just so we were fully prepared. But for Oma, her feet started turning purple, which was really alarming. And you could tell that she wasn't fully comfortable. Now, what I will say is there was a certain point where we did need the pharmaceuticals. And at this point at the stage of this game, we're talking about comfort care. This is not about extending life. So using things like morphine is not bad. She's not going to become addicted to an opiate at this point. It's really about keeping her comfortable. So we did give her a couple of small doses of hydromorphone just to keep her at ease, but she was still coherent, which was great. And we were able to have 11 days together where every night I'm up holding her hands and she's sucking on one of these little, it looks like a lollipop, but it's a little sponge that's dipped in blueberry juice just to keep her mouth a little bit moist, to give her something to do. And I would just sing to her every night and hold her hand and let her know that, she's going to be an angel soon, is the way that we framed it for her. With somebody that had that advanced dementia and Alzheimer's, it was something where sometimes we had to be really selective about the things that we shared with her, just because she didn't have the mental cognition to process it fully. And it can cause a lot more trauma. So that was our experience. Not saying it's right or wrong, but just sharing with you guys what we did. Now, I remember one of the coolest things about watching somebody begin to pass is what I call twilight time. And that's when you really become hyper aware of everything that's going on. Everything from, the small symbolism of things that are showing up to the synchronicities. For example, for her, there was one point where Anya, she's also very intuitive. She's like, I think she needs, a pastor or something to just kind of help her with that piece. Oma was a very religious person growing up. Opa wasn't. So getting back to her needs and what she needed in your end of life, having that confirmation from a priest that, she was going to go to heaven and Jesus was coming to take her was important for her. But we had made a call to a local church that Oma had gone to, and there was only one pastor out of 11 that was available that day to come up. So he came up after youth group, and we're at the top of this hill. So he's riding his bike at, crazy hot time in the day. He gets to the top of the hill, gets to our house, and we learned that he actually is the only pastor in that whole church that speaks German. So for her, it was really important for her to hear these psalms in German, and you could just see some of that like fear, anxiety just melt as soon as he began to share those prayers with her and to share those Bible passages. And for her, that's the other thing that we've learned too is, everybody has their own belief systems, especially at end of life, and it's important to respect those. and to honor them and to really set things up in a way that makes sense for them. So I remember after the pastor had visited, you know, she really was able to settle beyond the death anxiety and really just kind of like accept what was happening, which was really cool. And what I'll share with you is, you know, the last day of her being alive, you know, I'm sitting in the window behind us here, and she's looking out, and I told her the story of her life. And I told her, Melita, I promise you that I'll share your story with our grandkids someday, and they'll know the story of mischievous Melita. And you could see this little smile creep on her face. And then I got this text from Anya, because Anya was literally on her way to Germany for her own trip. She was finally taking her holiday after a few years. And it just was really interesting because she was leaving. So this goes back to what I was saying earlier about this moment of lucidity for Oma. And Anya texts me, she's like, is she still with us? I'm like, yes, she is. She's like, will you tell Melita that if she doesn't get her butt in the sky, I'll give her a kick in the butt with me. I need her to come with me to Germany. So I tell Oma what Anya's saying, and we're kind of having a laugh. And no lie, within 5 minutes or less, Oma looked at me, and I'll show you exactly how she died. It was so peaceful. She looked at me right in the eye, and she just did this. And that was it. There was no struggle. There was no gasping for air, which is something that's very common. There was no after gasps, which is also quite common because sometimes there's leftover air in the lungs or in the stomach. It was such a peaceful transition. And honestly, like for Melita, I couldn't have thought anything better. And she literally, you could just see her eye gaze go from me to the mountain. And she was gone. She was free. One of the things that I kept saying around that time is her spirit is too big for her body. And I really believe that. And I really believe that with the help of cannabis, it was really able to ease that transition for her, as well as the psilocybin. So that was Melita's journey. And there's a lot more story there, but for time's sake, I'll share with you what happened with Opa. Now, I told you some pretty heavy shit about his earlier years, and the reason I bring that up is because death anxiety is very real. You know, at some point, we're all gonna face it, and I really do believe that if we don't do our work while we're alive, we're given that opportunity at end of life. So my gentle invitation to you is to do your work now and continue to live your life to the fullest so you can die as peacefully as possible without regret. Now with Opa, he also had a stroke that ended up declining his health very quickly. Now Opa, he was somebody who, after a certain point when his body began to deteriorate, he had had an accident where he actually broke his neck. He should have died. He ended up hitting his head on the sidewalk, walking into a bakery. And because he's a big, stubborn German guy, he just wouldn't die. But that really was one of the blows at the beginning to the end. Similar to Oma breaking her hip, it really slowed her down. But with Opa, I mean, having his body give out on him, but still having his mind was torture in its own right. He continued to see himself being able to do less and less. Sorry, I have a little bug flying around. It's summertime. He was able to do less and less. And I think for a lot of people, especially men, we have this idea that our value is in what we do or what we do for others. And if we're no longer able to do these things like work or provide an income or fix the roof, that somehow our value is diminished and there's no reason to live, which I don't agree with, but I think our culture really reinforces that. And I invite you, if you've got those beliefs, to really challenge those things inside you. Now, Opa became very depressed, and he also was very like, cannabis is bad, marijuana is the devil's drug, don't want to touch it. But in his depression, you know, he stopped going to the dances with me and Oma. He wasn't enjoying food the way that he used to. And he really just wanted to die. And for like a good 2 years, he would ask me, please help me die. And he wasn't in any physical pain, and the MAID program didn't exist yet. So it really wasn't in my scope to help facilitate that, nor would I. You know, I feel like there was a huge karmic repercussion with that, and it really wasn't my place. So what I kept telling him was, don't worry, death's coming, and I'll let you know. So fast forward to him having this massive stroke where, again, Anya was there, you know, something's wrong. So we came and saw him right away, and we both got the intuitive hit that, you know, this was it. The other thing I'll say is it actually takes a really long time for a person to die. It took Oma 11 days without food and water to fully release, and Opa was about 10 days. So, you know, death is slow, especially, you know, if you're dying of natural causes. So that was one of the surprising things. But with Opa, when he had that stroke, I remember I whispered in his ear, I was like, Opa, your dream's coming true. And I could just see this like little smile creep on his face. Like, you're gonna die. And he was like so happy. So for that last, you know, 10 days that we had together, it was really magical. And what I'll do is I'll share some pictures in the chat after of just how profound it really was. Now, one of the reasons why he had the decline and had the stroke was about a week and a half earlier. You know, he had finally got to the hospital because he was having prostate issues, which is something that afflicts a lot of men, especially later in life, where he was getting up constantly feeling like he had to pee, then he didn't have to pee. And for somebody that wasn't able to walk very well, not only was it dangerous, but it was also super exhausting for him to get up that many times. He didn't want to wear Depends, very independent. So, you know, he was trying to make it work in his own way. But he had been hospitalized a little bit earlier than that, where they had put in a catheter, but he was unsupervised at the hospital. I was at work. I was under the impression that they had a caregiver that would sit with him, but the caregiver just read their book and wasn't paying attention. And he literally ripped out the catheter with the bladder expanded, which means that he destroyed the inside of his penis, which is like fucking awful. So he was in a lot of pain. One of the other things I will say is you have to advocate hard, super hard. And if you get a no from one person, you go to the next person. And I know that when I found out about this, I was very adamant that he needed to have supervision. So we just sat next to him. So I was like, you can't trust, you know, unfortunately. And I had asked for them to put in a hypoallergenic catheter, and they refused. And they said that he would be discharged. And we were at a point where I think it was like 5 or 6 days that he had been in the hospital, and he just wanted to go home. So we honored that. But he was in a lot of pain, and they had given him pain meds. And this is the first time he had been like in pain in his life. I mean, even that neck injury was nothing compared to this, obviously. And for him, having this degree of pain was so debilitating. I mean, it just added insult to injury, and he really wanted to go. Like, he really wanted to die. And the doctor had given him a pain med that didn't work, and then took off for 2 weeks on his holiday. And we were hooped as a family. So I finally convinced him to try cannabis oil. So we had given him like a Rick Simpson Phoenix type oil. And it was literally game changer. He was having bladder spasms. He was getting these sharp electric pains in his body to the point like he couldn't function, obviously. But with one dose of the Phoenix Tears oil, so this heavy concentrate THC oil, the spasm stopped immediately. He wasn't in pain. But not only that, he was able to sleep for the first time through the night in like freaking years. And he was a convert. He was like, it was his favorite thing. So this was like in his last like week and a half of life, and he's like, give me the marijuana oil. We're like, okay. So we're giving him little microdoses so he can still function in the daytime but have a really great sleep at night. And it gave him a better quality of life. Like, he was cool with it. He was happy with it. Now, that was the coolest thing, because even though he had a stroke, he became nonverbal. He also decided himself that he didn't want to eat. So he was the one that actually chose to not eat or drink. He wouldn't let us put anything in his mouth except for the marijuana oil, which I thought was really interesting. For being a stubborn old German guy, being open to this at end of life was literally a miracle. Now, one of the other things that happens when people are preparing to die, especially when they have time like this, is what's called moments of lucidity, where, you know, they're looking like they're on their way out, then all of a sudden they like, it's like they're back and they're present and they're talking to you, and it's very direct, which was wonderful. So by day 3 of him refusing to eat, he was like up and talking to us, which was really cool. We had a friend come over, and he knew that he was on his way out, and we felt it was important to do something to commemorate him while he was alive. So we had put together a celebration of life ceremony, also called death rites in the shamanic spiritual world, but we framed it as a celebration of life. And what was happening was the woman that was the celebrant, she's also a medium. So she's somebody that can communicate with spirit, and she was bringing forward some information for us to really add to an altar space for him. Now, like I said, he had really lost his faith a long time ago. But one of the things that came through that was interesting was his mom. And the woman that was doing the celebration of life ceremony, Lois, she had said, his mom's telling us that there's like a Viking ship in the house, but I can't call it a Viking ship. And what she was drawing on was this Norse god tradition of sailing into the next. So the term Viking, you know, in that tradition was a derogatory comment. But we were looking for this ship, which was really cool. So mom's like, I know where it is. I'll go get it. She like pulls out this ship out of the garage, and actually I have it. I'll just show you guys. I still have it on our china cabinet here. Let's see if I can do this. Boop, boop, boop. Right there. You can see it kind of hiding behind the plants there. So we pull out this Viking ship, and we put it on his altar. And, you know, other things that we were doing to commemorate him, he loved chocolate. He was always about sweeten up your life. He really loved, you know, wine. He always wanted to have somebody to enjoy a glass of wine with him. Not because he liked to get drunk, but because he really liked the camaraderie and the community around it. So we had that on his little altar. And I remember, you know, we did this wonderful celebration of life, and, you know, he was really, he seemed to be very at peace with us. And like I said, he was in a lucid state, so he was quite participatory with it, which was really cool. But after he had taken a nap, so this was in the afternoon, you know, the universe opened up and blessed me with a bit of reprieve, which was my favorite weather, which is the sun showers. So when it's sunshine and raining outside, and I was called to go into the backyard, into the garden, and just like literally stand there and let this warm rain down on me. And it was nearing sunset. And I thought it was just so crazy because in the distance, there was this, it was like, it literally was the Viking ship sailing off into the sunset. And also in the Norse tradition, if you guys, you know, watch, you know, any of the Thor mythology, there's this idea of a rainbow bridge that brings you from one level up to the next with the 3 worlds. And I was like, oh my God, this ship, it's in the sky, it's so cool. I have it here. I'll show it to you guys in the live chat. Let me just pull it up. It was just so crazy. And this is one of those things where I realized that, you know, when you are dying and also living, you're literally in the driver's seat every step of the way. Let's see if I can add this picture because I'd really love to share it. I don't know if you guys can see that. Maybe not. Oh shoot. Well, you know what, you guys? If you go to my Instagram, I'll pop it up there afterwards. So if you go to Selena Sativa, I'll pop it in there after. But literally the ship in the sky was so crazy. So I got so excited. I was like, oh my God. So I ended up going upstairs, and it was still sun showering, and I was so excited. I was going to tell Opa, and then I looked out his window, and there was literally a double rainbow outside of his bedroom window, which I thought was just like amazing. So for me, that was really affirming that, you know, even though we live our lives like, you know, life is happening to us, it really shared with me that, you know, these incredible synchronicities happen because we're actually in the driver's seat of everything. And the reason I wanted to share that with you guys is because I want to invite you to really live your life in the driver's seat of your own experience, creating it as you go. Now, for Opa, we had a wonderful few days left, and the reason why I brought up his intense beginnings of life is because, just like a lot of people, that death anxiety did definitely creep in. And I remember one of his last nights alive, he got into this like feverish state where he was like speaking in Old German and nobody knew what the heck he was saying, and he was very, very upset. And I didn't speak German, but I knew how to sing German songs, and I knew how to say I love you. So what I ended up doing was just kept repeating to him, you know, I love you, you're safe, like I'm here with you. And I was holding his hand while he was going through this terror. And this is before we had psilocybin, so this was 5 years ago now. And I remember singing to him and holding his hands, and we had what I call our last dance. Actually, this was the last night of him being alive. We had our last dance, and I'm holding his hand and I'm singing him, you know, he loves that Que Sera song. And I actually haven't been able to bring myself to sing it since he passed, or since Oma passed, I should say. You know, whatever will be, will be. Freaking love that song. So we had our last dance, and I remember just to help him settle, I mean, the cannabis was helping to a point, but it got to the point where we needed something else. So like I said, you know, having, you know, certain pharmaceutical drugs available was helpful. We gave him a very small dose of hydromorphone just to calm him, and he ended up easing into a very gentle and peaceful sleep. Now, the interesting thing is, in the morning, this is when Oma was still alive, she got right up out of bed, walked to the edge of his bed, and for the first time in a long time said something. And the nurse was laying on the ground and witnessed this, and that's how I know. But she literally looked at him for about a minute, and she said, it's time for you to rest now and be peaceful. And she just went back into her bed. They have these cute little single beds. She went back to sleep, and within a few minutes, he passed away. Now, he passed away with such a huge smile on his face that we like literally couldn't put the dentures like back in his mouth because he just looked freaking goofy. And what we ended up doing in the spirit for Bernie was to really keep things light. So instead of dressing him up in a suit, we actually dressed him kind of like Weekend at Bernie's. Like we gave him like a really sweet, like his favorite Hawaiian shirt. And we found some white shorts for him to wear. And we had a wonderful celebration of life for him during the day. And one of the last surprises, which scared the hell out of me, but also was so perfect, was as I was there alone with his body and, you know, just about to cry. And he was always like, don't cry, always look at the bright side of life, blah, 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 blah. Just about to go into it, I hear for the first time in years this cuckoo clock in our living room just like go off. It was so crazy. It actually kind of scared me for a second. And he had made Anya make him a promise that when he died, that she would start up the cuckoo clock and that she would have it go for a full 24 hours. So every hour on the hour for a day, we had this cuckoo clock celebrating his life with us, which was really special. Now, I know this is a big, long story, and I know that we've woven cannabis in there, and there's some other nuances where, yeah, you know, just out of privacy, I'm not going to share those pieces with you guys here. But if you are interested in helping somebody that you know die with dignity with cannabis, please know that you can always reach out to me and we can talk about what's going on, and I can help, you know, guide you towards some resources. But really the point of this that I want you guys to take from this is to live your life to the fullest with no regrets. Because I feel like, especially when you're at the end of life and your body doesn't work anymore, if you've been gifted with, you know, the ability to make it to the point where you can die naturally, if you don't deal with your shit, you're going to sit there and be forced to deal with it. And without the ability to move your body or say the words that you want to speak, that can be a really torturous place to be. And one of the best lessons I got out of taking care of them, other than the patience, other than the intuitive guidance, other than, you know, the joy of knowing that I helped them die at home with dignity and with love, twofold. One is really to live your life with no regrets, which means to show up fully, to be fully present. When you get those pushes to do something that pushes you out of your comfort zone, like me sharing the story is freaking terrifying, but I felt guided to share. Just do it, you know, and don't be so afraid of, you know, failing. Failing is one of the best ways that we can learn and how we can grow. And sometimes by being vulnerable and showing up, you can actually help change the trajectory of everything. Now, the other gift that I got out of this was I didn't turn away from the death, which a lot of people do. And I think everybody grieves in their own way. So like no blame or shame in any of that. But what I realized is when you can love somebody so unconditionally, when you know that they're going to die and you don't turn away and you continue to show up, you get to live your life with no regrets too. And I really want this to be an invitation for you to show up for your loved ones. So if anywhere along the line you felt an intuitive hit to reach out to a family member or somebody that you haven't talked to in a while, let this be an invitation for that. And the last thing that I'll leave you with before we move into the meditation is that this life is not happening to you, it's happening through you. And that you are absolutely in the driver's seat of every single second of it. And when we talked about the shadow work last time, you know, and pretending that, you know, we're a victim, you're not. You get to fully show up for your life in a way that makes sense for you. And even though we've all got crazy conditioning, and even though we've all been through a lot of stuff, I believe that your character is defined by how you handle those challenges. You know, will you lie down and become a victim, or will you stand up and become a victor? And you may trip and fall a million times, but that's not the point. It's about getting back up again. So if I can just leave you with that for now, I say that in the most loving way. And I know that, you know, it's not our fault, the shit that happened to us as kids, but we also have this opportunity now as adults to make those changes and to live in a way that's impactful, that matters to us. So that's my invitation for you here. So I know this has been a long story. And if you're still with me, thank you for joining me. I invite you to have a few more tokes. If I had a join here, I would have one. So please have one for me. And I'm gonna have a little bit more water, and I'd love to move into the meditation portion. So please take a minute, have a quick pee. I'm actually gonna go and get a joint, and I'll be right back.
Well, I guess I'll hold it down for a few seconds while Selena's off going and getting some more water. I'll maybe throw a little bong in the little dab in the bong. That was a very very powerful story, very powerful indeed. I didn't know a lot of that stuff about Selena's grandparents, but what a story! Wow, holy smokes! And even for her to be in the room where they passed away, in the house, and it's a really very cool, very powerful thing. I'm sure I'm not the only one that enjoyed it. That is for sure. We still got the chat room going on here. Yep, there we go. Everyone's doing their thing. So let's have a little dab, shall we? Maybe a little Jaeger. Jaeger sauce.
What you got there?
I held it down for you while you were off.
I appreciate that, thank you. I was like, man, after that was so scary.
Little Jaeger.
Oh, nice.
Basically jam, but dabs.
Is it delicious?
Yeah, I know you need a hash church. Don't worry, it's coming. I'm going to do another hash church one of these days. Don't worry. I've just been really enjoying your show, and I also really enjoyed the Dragonfly Earth Medicine series that they did there. I think they did 5 or 6 shows there. That was, it's just really nice to not have to be responsible for all of it, but to still get to enjoy some quality information. Beautiful garden. My wife wants seeds from your garden big time. She was like, those tomatoes look amazing.
Oh, thank you. Definitely grown with love. Do you guys have a garden out there?
Yes and no. We have enough space, that's for sure. I've been kind of waiting to get a greenhouse, but I think I'm just going to maybe next spring build some, square pots like you got there, and go from there.
You know what? I was like so surprised at how you can create a garden with so little. You know, like the wood that we have there for those square gardens, that was all gifted to us from a friend in the community. And literally we just like went on Pinterest, got an idea and went for it. And then I have a friend that's got a great living soil company in the region. So we just had him deliver a bunch of soil and now we're set.
Beds and soils, you're laughing.
Totally, and that's sustainability. Like I know once COVID hit, I got a big intuitive push to just like secure your stash and secure your food yourself. And the best way to do that is just grow it. Grow your own.
Totally.
And then you know what's in your food.
I think a lot of people were feeling that once this COVID-19 thing hit. A lot of people were like, I want to grow plants. I want to grow food. So thanks for the inspiration walking us through your garden. I'll let you lead the meditation now.
I'm happy to share. Thanks you guys for showing up and enjoying it with me. So I hope everyone had move your body a bit if you haven't, and get comfortable and get into a position where you really feel the surface beneath you. If you want to lay down for this, you're more than welcome to, but if you're somebody that falls asleep during meditation, probably best not to. And what I want to do is I just want to invite you to close your eyes and begin to take a few deep, conscious breaths. Notice the surface beneath you and notice how you're supported in this moment. Notice how that surface is connected to Gaia, our Earth Mother, underneath you here, and how she really is holding you up. Gaia provides. She gives us everything we need in order to survive and thrive in this life. She gives us so many things: resources, food, community, connectivity, love, and all of these interesting molecules that dance and play within us, creating this physical structure in and around us. So take a moment and tune into Gaia, our Earth Mother, our first mother, and give thanks. Moving your attention now into your heart, I invite you to tune in and begin to notice your own unique rhythms, your pulse. And I invite you to feel the aliveness that's within you. Notice your essence. Notice how you feel. And notice how when you breathe, you can bring yourself back into this moment, here and now. How you can regain control of the mind and this moment. As a reminder, your imagination can affect your reality. It is through our imagination that we have thought, which then gets translated into potentially words or actions, which then turn into things. Imagination is a very powerful place. And today, we're going to invite cannabis to work with us and through us and our imagination to connect not only with ourselves in this moment, but also our lineage before this timeline, our mothers and fathers before, and their mothers and fathers before them, and their mothers and fathers before them, and on, and on, and on. Recognize that you are the manifestation of an unbroken chain of life, of experiences, of choices, decisions, and actions that have led to you right here and now, and how precious you are, and how important you are. And also how loved you are. Thank cannabis for her gift of a better life, of easing those tensions, of allowing the inspiration for health and for healing. Thank her for her gift in choosing to commune with us, humanity, in order to continue to do her work with her and through her. Feel her love and know that she is here with you in all ways. Tuning into our body, tuning into ourselves, tuning into our frequency. Notice the energies that are coalescing and that are dancing together, almost like a flame. Your essence and cannabis playing. She wants to take you on a journey. And she asks that you're open to playing. You are safe. And you are in control. And here, together now, we're going to begin to explore deeper those ancestral bonds and how in this moment we are able to transmute traumas, beliefs, behaviors, and patterns into new beliefs, behaviors, and actions that we can then determine and decide for not only ourselves, but in how we want to affect those future generations that come beyond us, either of our own bodies or of those around us as a human collective. Bringing our awareness in, zooming in, going smaller and seeing not only the systems of the bodies, but the cells. And not only the cells, but the synapses. And not only those communications, but the energy exchange. And begin to notice that the more you hone in and zoom in, the more something turns into an energy, a frequency. It is from this space that we can begin to do the work and make it lasting along timelines. And we can choose how we would like to live forward, regardless of all that has come before us and all that is seemingly programmed into us now. Take a few more deep, conscious breaths. And see yourself as the best and most realized version of you. The one that has overcome the fear, stepped into their highest potential, and is acting from a place of true integrity and true love for yourself and those around you. Imagine the conditioning washing away with every breath, revealing a more authentic and genuine version of yourself in every new moment. Recognize that these things happened, but they don't define you anymore. What defines you is how you choose to embrace and be present in this moment now. And yes, you will be triggered. And yes, things will come up. But it is through this awareness in the now that we have the control and the ability to shift timelines and to heal those ancestral wounds and traumas. Instead of reacting, we begin to respond. We allow ourselves to take the pause, to reflect, and to be present with what is and what we choose, instead of what was and what we don't want. Moving moving into this space of pure awareness. I invite you to go on a journey with cannabis. Imagine her taking you by the hand and moving you forward into this timeline where those who are around you are influenced by you, and how you begin to affect the domino of evolution through how you interact with the present moment. Tune into cannabis. Ask her for guidance. And ask her not only to show you, but to help you feel into this potential and make it a reality here and now. Ask her. She'll show you. As she continues to show you, you feel her pulse within you. You feel her presence and her strength continue to help and support and guide you through these moments, bringing more and more clarity and sharing with you the potential manifest through this now moment. You are the accumulation of all that has happened and all that is to come. And with cannabis as your ally, she can help to gently nurture and guide you as you move through the wounds, the pain, and those points that either make you choose to react or respond. And you can call on her anytime. She is with you and in you. She is in your cells. She is merged with your essence. And together, as friends, you will be able to continue to do this work, not only for yourself and healing you in this now moment, but healing the lineage before you and paving a new path for that which is to come. She loves you. She cares about you. She wants to see you live your best life, fully fulfilled, no regrets, only adventure and stories and laughter, challenges that you've overcome, and opportunities to learn and grow and get to know yourself better through the process. And seeing you manifest and create that life that then ripples out and affects so many others because you chose to live your greatest self. You chose to step, even though it was uncomfortable, to go for it. She wants to see you thrive. It's part of her gift to humanity. It's part of her gift to you. She wants to remind you too, to lighten up, to find the sweetness in life, and to really go for the nectar. Enjoy the honey. And to really appreciate the beauty all around you while you can. Your presence is your purpose. And what you bring to each moment is the gift. And we'd like to invite you to feel into this. Feel into your body. And feel into the love that envelops you now. Know that you are fully supported and loved, and that you have a friend with you at any time. You don't even need to smoke a joint. She's in your cells. But if you want to, that's fine too. So I'd like to invite you to sit in this energy of presence, of purpose and awareness with cannabis. And with each breath, imagine expanding that, making it greater and greater until it saturates the room that you're in. You can feel her in every cell of your body. Again, feeling into the aliveness that is you. Tuning into that internal rhythmless of your heart. And when you're ready, bringing your awareness back into this space, here and now. Wiggling your toes and your fingers and feeling the seat beneath you. Feeling Gaia's support. And when you're ready, I invite you to open your eyes and come back into this space. Thank you. Take a few more moments and feel. And I just want to say thank you, cannabis, for the healing, for the wisdom, and for your love. And I want to thank all of you for joining me on this adventure in life together. Thank you for joining me in the garden and enjoying the fruits of all she has to gift. Thank you so much for being here with me and holding such beautiful space for me to share this story from the heart. Like I said, it's the first time I've shared Omanopa's story since Oma passed a couple of years ago. And I shared it once after that, but this has been a long time. And I just want to thank you all for your kindness and your love and your presence. I've really enjoyed being in this community with you. And I really look forward to our next time together. So I'm just taking a look here. So I just want to say goodbye to you guys for now. And I wish I could say everybody's name here, but again, thank you so much for joining me. And the next episode is going to be in 2 weeks. So it's every second Sunday at 7 o'clock usually. I know today we had some weird freak storm and then it was fine, but every second Sunday. So on the Sunday closest to the full moon. So in a couple of weeks. And in the meantime, I want to invite you again to take a moment and really reflect on what this new energy time means for you and how you want to move forward with your life. If there's anything that you're ready to let go of, what I love doing is writing it down on a piece of paper, writing on the back of that paper what I want to bring into my life, and then I burn it. And for me, that's a really simple ritual that really just helps me get clear, move forward, allow the things to let go that are ready to be let go, and have a focus forward. So again, from my heart to all of you, thank you so much for showing up. And please know that your presence really is the gift. So I invite you to enjoy this next new moon and enjoy planting the seeds of your best version of yourself in this life here and now.
Thanks, Selena.
Thank you so much for joining us, Marcus, and for holding such beautiful space. This has been wonderful. And I know it's a bit late, so thank you.
We've been enjoying a lightning storm over Bowen Island, so I'm going to go out and try and get some pictures. And my son, it's the first time he's ever seen lightning, so we're quite enjoying it.
Oh my God. Okay, well, get out there, be safe. And I'm so stoked to see the pictures. And I'm actually going to go and have a midnight burn in my garden right now.
Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing your story, Selena. It was really awesome. And I look forward to the next episode.
Thanks for having me. I look forward to seeing you guys again soon. Take care.